this gun here, I got it recently. A friend of mine had it actually and said to me, I've got a gun you probably want to buy. And I said, I don't need another shotgun, sorry. But he was kind of pretty adamant that he wanted me to buy it off him, and in the end he offered it to me for $150 and threw in a box of 12 gauge brass cases, so it got to the stage where I really couldn't say no. So anyway, now it's mine. So it's a late 19th century double 12 gauge. I don't know if that'll focus. By Claborough and Johnson. It says in the barrels London and Birmingham. Now a bit of research showed Claborough and Johnson were gun makers, but they're also big exporters. They had offices in San Francisco, and they sent a lot of guns to North America and also to Australia and New Zealand probably. So this is obviously one of them. So quite a nice looking gun actually. I mean, it's only it's a Birmingham style, not too expensive but not cheap and nasty double hammer gun. Probably from the 1880s, I thought. I'll talk about that, why I think that in a minute. It's got a lovely piece of walnut on it. If you look at this, this has been obviously been restored at some stage, and there's some clues about that as well. So I'll just put the camera on the tripod. Right, some of the features of this gun, pretty standard double hammer gun. Top lever, opening up. Now if we look at this breech, this is just a bit of information for those who may not be aware. You've got twin locking lumps at the bottom, and you've got this bit here at the top here. Now this, and you've got the Greener crossbolt, that crossbolt coming out there like that, which obviously locks into this hole here. That's called a Greener crossbolt. Invented by W.W.Greener in the 1860s, and then perfected. The system was perfected and patented in 1873. Greener called it his treble wedge fast system. So that's what this gun is. It's actually a classic treble wedge fast system. So this book here, it's worth buying if you can find one. The gun and its development by W.W.Greener, William Wellington Greener. It was first written in the 1880s. The last edition was written in 1910, but I think it's still in print, or it's been in print till fairly recently, because this one's from the 1980s, I think, 1988. But look at this gun here. It's W.W.Greener's triple wedge fast system, and if you look, it's exactly the same as my gun. You've got the two bites in the lumps at the bottom, and then you've got this barrel extension which goes into a slot in the standing breech, and the Greener crossbolt that goes across. So it was very widely used after his patent expired. A lot of gun makers used it in the late 1800s. So yeah, so it's a good system. Now, if we look at the condition of this gun, the bores are about, I'd say, 80%. There's actually a little bit of pitting on the inside about here in both barrels. Not enough to make it non-shootable, but and then there's also some pitting, a little bit of pitting on the outside as well there. Now these are Damascus barrels. I'm not sure if you look very closely, you can actually see the twist pattern in the steel. I'm planning, it's one of the things in this gun, I'm planning to polish the barrels and re-brown them in the old method, using browning and then pickling to actually bring out the different colours. Other front features, the way of removing the fore end is just here. Most shotgunners are probably familiar with that general design. That's called a Dealey fore end catch, because it was invented by a guy called Dealey. The butt plate, when I first saw this I thought, oh, it's weird, someone must replace it with a plastic butt plate. Well, when I looked closer I realised it's actually made out of cow horn or buffalo horn or something. And you can see where the horn's kind of a bit sort of chewed by insects or something on the side, but it's kind of okay, so I'll be leaving that. Now, one interesting thing about this gun, which must admit I didn't notice when I first got it, not that it would have made any difference because it was so cheap anyway. Just here now. Now, if you look at this is just the wrist, the top of the wrist of the gun. Go back. You can see here. I didn't notice, but this gun's actually been repaired. There's actually cracks through the stock down here, around here, going up to here. Because I noticed that little circle and I thought, what's that? And then when I realised if you turn it upside down, it's actually where this screw goes through the stock. And you can see there's a crack all the way here, around here and through here. Obviously at some stage in the past this stock has cracked and has been repaired, but it's obviously been repaired by someone who really knows what they're doing, because and then the stock's obviously been refinished. But that crack obviously went through to that screw, so the screw would no longer be able to be have anything to bite into. So whoever's repaired this has actually drilled right through the stock. He's obviously drilled through the stock, replaced it with a plug of timber, which is a different colour to the rest of the timber, sanded it back, and then actually redone because as you can see the actual checkering actually covers that, looks perfect over the repair. So well, I don't think it's such a good repair. Hopefully I'm only going to be shooting black powder in this gun. Right, yeah, so I'm going to have to dispense with the tripod for a while because I can't get it to focus on the setting where I can zoom in. Anyway, that's much better there. So you can actually see the cracks, the repaired cracks in the stock, and see where that's been repaired and check it. So yeah, it's just an interesting aside to this gun. Now if you look on the bottom, there's this different coloured timber in here, which, I mean, it's very well done, and it may be from when the gun was made, but I'm a bit suspicious because it's a similar sort of light coloured wood to the other one, that maybe there was a chip in the front of the fore end and that's actually been repaired at the same time. But yeah, neither actually detract from the gun. They're not really noticeable. So let's have a look at the proofs. Alright, now this is a bit better. I've tipped the barrel over so it's kind of pointing towards the light a bit more. Now you've got your Crown BP and Crown BV. So that's Birmingham proof. So that's just a standard proof for black powder. And then BV I think is sort of similar sort of thing, but that's the final proof. You've got 12C, which means 12 gauge. Now you got at the back, this one's got 13.1 and that one's got 13 on it. What that generally means is the actual internal bore measurements are closer to 13 gauge within a certain range. You've got choke here but no choke there. So basically we've got we've got a cylinder bore on the first right barrel, and we've got some choke on the second barrel to be determined. So that in itself dates one of these old hammer guns, because chokes really didn't come in until I think the mid 1880s. On the barrels themselves, so it's got C&J, Claborough Johnson Now I'm not sure what this here is. There's some little stars and things. These are obviously, and there's a crown with a fleur-de-lis sort of thing on both barrels. So that's obviously the proofing of the barrels themselves, presumably. On the actual gun, we've got that triangle with C&J, Claborough Johnson. We've got your BV, which is your final proof mark from Birmingham. Now there's 571 and 1005. Now what some of those ones actually are, oh no, see this gun is actually 571, so that's actually hand engraved there. So this gun is actually number 571. So that's the serial of the gun. Now there's 1005. I'm not sure. Sometimes there's actually proof. Sometimes the what's stamped on the guns is not the proof, is actually a patent number. It might specify a patent number, something that's been used where the gun makers paid someone else for a patent. So this is black powder proof only. So it's a good idea just to shoot black powder in these guns. Something interesting about this gun is it actually doesn't actually mention the normally they'll say 2.5 or something to show the length of the cartridge. This doesn't actually mention it, but I did. So when that happens, you've got to work out, is this gun 2.5? It probably is, because it's an English gun from that period, but you need to kind of make sure. So let's just have a look at that now. Right, so I'm just going to talk about cartridge length for a minute, because if you've just come across an old gun, this is an important thing which you may not be aware of. The early English guns were virtually all designed to fire 2.5-inch cartridges, or 65mm in metric parlance. Now, the length of the cartridge is actually the fired length of the cartridge from here to here. Now, this is actually this is actually a British. So it's a theoretically 67.5mm. So it's not a full it's not like a modern style 2 3/4 inch 70mm cartridge. This is a cartridge that's actually safe to fire in 2.5-inch guns. Theoretically 2.5 inch is actually 65mm, but I don't know why they seem to make them in 67.5. They must have just worked out that all of these guns have slightly longer than actual 60 mils. But these are made specifically to shoot in guns. You can shoot them in modern guns, of course, as well, but or in 70mm chamber guns. So this, if I measure that, it's actually 66.5 long. So the chamber actually comes down. If you imagine this sitting inside the chamber in the gun, the chamber comes down and then finishes theoretically just in front of there, and then there's a slight step, and then the ball goes out that way. Now, if you put a longer cartridge, a 70mm cartridge, if when the wad opens, like the chamber finishes here, the wad can't fully open, or sorry, not the wad, the crimp. The crimp can't fully open because the chamber is too short. Obviously, it's going to increase the pressure because it has to force its way out through there. So that's why you never shoot a 2 3/4 inch or 70mm cartridge in a 2.5 inch or 65mm gun. Now, most of these old guns will actually have on the flats of the barrel that we were just looking at, they'll have 2.5 inch written on them. Because some guns actually, even in the 1800s, there was some gun makers offered guns with longer cartridges, and occasionally apparently we'll come across, but every old English gun I've ever seen is 2.5 inch. So from the 19th century. Anyway, once we got into the early 20th century, then I think the 2 3/4 started coming into play. So what we've got to do now is this gun. There we go. Now I'm just going to turn the camera off and change camera settings so I can zoom in. There we go. Now, can you see that? You can actually see the end of it. It's because of the kind of perspective, it looks like it's a really long way down, but you can actually see the end of the chamber there. See that step? You know, when I go like this, there's a dark ring down there. So that's where the slight step, it's not a 90-degree step, it's probably like a little 45-degree step from the chamber to the bore. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to try to measure. I can actually, as I go like that, move this, I can actually feel, it's quite hard to do actually, but I don't know if you can see how I'm trying to keep that parallel with the chamber as I push it in. See how it moves in. So that's actually the length of the chamber. The chamber seems to go into the bore. So yeah, so this is a 2.5-inch chambered gun. So when I start shooting it, I'll only be using 2.5, 65 or 67.5 millimeter black powder cartridges that I'll load. Right, now I just had a thought, I might, while we're talking about cartridge length and black powder cartridges, I'll have a quick word about loading some black. If you've got one of these old guns and you want to shoot it, well, you need to load some cartridges. There's a couple of ways of doing it. Well, you can either buy something like yearly firsts, and these are, you know, when you buy them, they're obviously going to be smokeless powder, so you have to shoot them off in another gun first. But then these are the same brand as the other one I showed you before, but these are actually 67 millimeters. The other ones are 67.5, but still, you know, designed for a 2.5-inch gun. Now, basically, this is just a cartridge that I've fired, and then I've got that other gun I was saying, which is nitro-proofed, and then I've actually reloaded this just using a standard reloading method of redoing the crimp and everything, using a fibre wad, a card over the top of the powder and a fibre wad. So this cartridge would be quite okay to use in this gun. If you're having trouble finding 2.5 or 65 or 67mm cartridges, the other option is just to get, this is just a general, whatever it is, Winchester AA kind of 70mm cartridge. And all I've done is got a pair of scissors, and where the actual crimp starts, just cut it off sort of as level as you can with a pair of scissors, and then just load it up. And then just use an overshot card and use an old-fashioned turnover tool, if you're not familiar with those. Well, I'll show you one now if you like. So this is an antique turnover tool. They're fairly widely available on eBay or whatever, original ones. Basically, it may appear a bit funny that I've got this mounted upside down, but I have all my reloading, because I don't really have a proper reloading bench. I've got my reloading tools mounted on a wooden sawhorse, and this just doesn't go wide enough to actually clamp to the sawhorse, so we'll just clamp it on the side and use it upside down. It still works alright. So basically what you do is you put your cartridge in there, with your card and everything. Actually, I must say it's a bit tricky using it upside down, because you've got to make sure the shot doesn't fall out. And then you just turn this, and it actually rolls over the shoulder of the cartridge. Either if you're loading a crimped cartridge, it will actually kind of put a little shoulder on this and help make it, you know, hold the crimp in place. Or if you've got an overshot card, it just rolls the plastic end over the card like that. So, but this is a good method if you don't want to muck around going and trying to find proper shorter cases and stuff, just, you know, you can go to any gun club and pick up hundreds of normal cases. You know, you don't have to get the special, any sort of special type. And then one point though is that when you use black powder, it tends to melt holes in the cases and stuff, so you can only use them once with black powder and then chuck them away. That's the beauty with brass ones. If you're really keen, you can buy brass cases. So I was saying that the guy I bought the gun off said, you know, gave me a sweetener, a box of brass cases. So this is them. These are actually modern brass cases made by, or they're Magtech, they're actually made by CBC, I think, in Brazil. They just take a large pistol primer, so yeah, I mean, you can load those up and probably, I mean, you want to give them a good clean after using black powder, but dry them out and use them again. I think they'll probably last indefinitely. Alright, now I'm going to talk about why did this guy sell me this gun so cheap. As I said, the bores are okay, you can see it looks quite nice. So let's just put it together. Alright, now, if you've got a gun like this, get an old gun and you want to sort of see, you know, check one thing to do. Go like that, just hold it and shake it, and it should just be like a lump of timber. It should be completely solid, there should be no movement anywhere in anything. You can probably hear that. So this gun is loose. A couple of things are loose actually. It's loose on the face, and the fore ends are loose, and they're caused by the same thing basically. So what we need to do with this gun is we need to tighten it up. So you can see here's the hinge pin here. So we have to actually bring the old terminology for this problem, and it's a common problem in break open guns and rifles that have had a fair bit of use, is it's off its face. That's what the old British gunsmiths used to call it, off its face. So you have to put it back on face. So what that involves, the reason it's off its face, so let's just take this off for a start. You can see here, this is the pivot point of the barrels on the pin there, and that's where the wear is.